Hey, Diana, did you know it's simple to get a grip on your business?
Mark, that's the stupidest thing I've ever heard.
Ladies and gentlemen, jurists and just curious, welcome to the Successful Barrister Podcast. Here you'll learn about marketing, management, and life skills for lawyers that probably won't get you disbarred. Hosted by Marc Whitehead, a seasoned lawyer who remembers when fax machines were cutting edge, and Diana Berry, attorney, COO, and the brains behind the scenes. Together, they are the legal world's most dynamic duo since statutes met regulations. So if you're looking to build a practice, not a prison, you're in the right place. Welcome to the Successful Barrister, where legal legends are made.
All right. Welcome, everybody, to the second edition of the Successful Barrister Podcast. I'm Marc Whitehead, alongside my brilliant co-host, Diana Berry. I got her name right.
You stumbled this time.
I got her name right this time. This whole married maiden name thing, it confuses me. It's almost as confusing as pronouns, but it's okay. We're all good. So, Diana, what's up? What's in the news today?
EOS, apparently.
Apparently. So what is EOS?
The Entrepreneurial Operating System.
All right. So the EOS system has been in the news lately. I've been reading. There's over 40,000 companies currently using the EOS system. The genesis of the EOS system was from the book Traction, written by Gino Wickman. And there's a whole interesting story behind Geno Wickman and how he split off from the scaling up company. But anyway, so EOS has been in the news lately. And the reason that's fascinated us here at Marc Whitehead and Associates is that we have begun our EOS journey. In December 2023, we began working with an EOS implementer. There's a whole terminology that you have to learn around EOS, but her term would be an implementer. So, all right, Dana, just in your own words, why the hell did we even do this to begin with?
Mark said so.
Because I said so. Damn right I said so. And why did I say so?
Yeah, I think the EOS works for, so of those 40,000, there's public and private companies across all matter of industries. And so I think that it's found its way to the legal industry recently, or more recently for our world. And it really helps us focus in on leadership, accountability, helps our leadership team focus, kind of break through to that next level, I think is what you were looking for, to get us to that next step.
Yeah, and that's sort of the generic clinical answer. The real answer is because Craig Goldenfarb and Tom Toner were doing it, and if they've got one, I want one too.
This is very true.
That's true.
This is
I will. I'm all about keeping up with the Joneses. They did it. They said it was great, so I got to have one of me then.
And it's worked out for us.
It has. It has. The EOS system, we have a couple of books in front of us. So we have the book Traction, which is not Gino Wickman's only book, but I think it's the one that it's funny out there in the world of motivational speakers and coaches and everything. Everybody keeps writing books until they have the one book that hits big. Mm-hmm. And Traction was the one book that hit big for Gino Wickman, and it launched his overarching business was to establish the EOS. I'm going to call it a coaching program. I know they don't like that term, but in my world, as a business coach myself, anybody that's out there coaching, consulting, guiding, manipulating, massaging you, doing whatever they want to push you in a certain direction, push your business in a certain direction, I generically refer to as a coaching program. But anyway, I guess the real issue is, why has EOS become so popular? What is the problem that EOS is attempting to solve for businesses?
I don't know. That's a great question.
Well,
what do you think the answer is?
For one thing, when you grow a business, you have to hire people. You have to scale up your business. And the more people you bring on, the harder it is to get everybody rowing in the same direction. It's harder to get everybody sharing the same shared vision, buying into the plan, buying into the culture. It requires almost a system. And now how many employees do we have?
Over 50, plus nearshore and offshore. We're a team of about 65 to get the...
Okay. So how in the world do we manage 65 people that are in multiple states, that are in multiple countries, that are in massively different time zones.
Mm-hmm.
How do you get all of these people rowing in the same direction? And I think that is one of the things that law firms of all shapes and sizes are always struggling with, is how do you get everybody moving in the same direction and really getting that buy-in? That's the issue, I think, that Geno Wickman has tried to solve through his EOS system. So fill us in a little bit, Diana. You're more in tune with the ins and outs. What have we covered so far in EOS? Like, what's the basic structure? Give everybody a sense of what the basic structure of the EOS program looks like.
I think, to your point, it's the beauty of EOS is its simplicity. And one of the things that they first do is the people in a services business, like we mostly are, especially for our listeners, then your people are everything. And so they clarified our relationship. You are our visionary. I am the integrator. And so it made us very clear about where your role starts and where my role picks up and what I'm responsible for and what you can hold me accountable for. And so it defines, they call it the accountability chart, which is vastly different from the org chart. And so with that, then you have the way that the firm works, where you can hold people accountable for what responsibilities. Then you have, I think, the level 10s, which I love. The level 10 meetings, it's a very basic format, but I love it. Obviously, I tend to run the meeting most of the time as the integrator. So it's a 90-minute meeting with a very clear, concise format on how you're supposed to address things. And it encourages accountability by its sheer, just the way that the meeting is supposed to work. You also have a scorecard. I think these are the three of the four probably most popular tools. The scorecard is where it's a very short, it's a one-page metrics that you look at every week. And if it's not where you're supposed to be, then you bring it into your level 10 meeting to discuss your issues. But I think it's really simple in the tools that Gino Wickman suggested to encourage, again, I use the word accountability a lot in this explanation, but that's what you need to make sure everyone's doing what they say that they're supposed to do so that the next person can rely on those outcomes.
This podcast is sponsored by Marc Whitehead Associates, a national disability benefits law firm. Marc Whitehead runs a firm of over 60 dedicated people whose mission is to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Marc represents disabled claimants in Social Security disability, private disability insurance, and veterans disability claims in all 50 states. Marc Whitehead is double board certified in both Social Security disability law and personal injury trial law. Marc has litigated disability cases in over 40 states and counting and can help your clients too. Stop throwing your phone calls away. Call Marc Whitehead at 701-VIP-LEAD. That's 701-VIP-LEAD. Or visit our website at disabilitydenials.com. Referral fees are paid in all jurisdictions where it is permitted. Refer us your disability cases today and know that your clients will be in good hands.
All right. Last segment, I said that we were going to go get a little bit more into sort of the nuts and bolts and of how EOS actually works from a functional standpoint. But it occurred to me during the break. In the first segment, I could not remember the name of the author of Scaling Up. Scaling Up was actually written by Verne Harnish. Mm-hmm. So there's an interesting backstory here. Gino Wickman used to work for Verne Harnish over at Scaling Up. And Scaling Up probably came out, I'm going to guess, maybe 10 or 15 years before Traction did. So, and Gino worked for the Scaling Up organization, and he kind of broke off on his own and developed the Traction/EOS system, which is a direct competitor to Verne Harnish's Scaling Up. And I know this because I actually evaluated both systems when we were picking what sort of system we wanted to go with. And I will say, ultimately, I picked the EOS system because, quite frankly, it's a little bit simpler and I thought a little bit easier to implement. I think the Scaling Up system is great for what I would call larger organizations that maybe are probably in the hundreds of people, maybe 50 million in revenue, whatever. It's a more complicated system. And I felt that the EOS system was actually simpler. It would be simpler to implement for a smaller organization like ours. So the fun thing is, though, is if you Google scaling up versus EOS. There's lots of good little behind-the-scenes scuttlebutt about the competition between Gino Wickman and Verne Harnish.
Oh, wow.
And they actually address it, and they kind of talk about it a little bit. So it's an interesting backstory. I have met both people. I've met both Gino and I've met Verne Harnish, both great people, brilliant thinkers. But it is funny how this industry can get a little bit competitive. And 30 years ago, when I first started out, none of this even existed. I mean, if I would have had these types of tools 30 years ago, my yacht wouldn't be 27 feet. It'd be 127 feet. So, but such is life. Those are the breaks. So anyway, we chose the EOS system for its simplicity and I think ease of implementation, and the fact that Craig and Tom had already done it. So I knew people who had been successful with it. So we hire a woman by the name of Christine Spray. Tell us about Christine.
Christine's an implementer for EOS. She's also got a number of other accolades. She's written some books. She's a coach for Vistage. But Christine's job, basically, specifically for us, was to help us implement, hence the term, the implementer role, implement EOS. It's usually about a 2-year commitment for both parties to really kind of help us learn how to do EOS. And then supposedly after 2 years, we've quote unquote graduated and we're able to run EOS on our own.
Yes. And it's funny because it's a 2-year program. I cannot possibly imagine us doing this without some form of implementer even after 2 years. So in my mind, it's my professional life commitment. I don't think we'll end it after 2 years, but you never know.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm happy to continue on past the 2-year point, and I'm sure Christine would be happy too to keep accepting our checks.
She's great at what she does. She is definitely a natural. She's done it for many. She's done it for law firms. That was the big selling point. There are a ton of EOS implementers out there, and if any of our listeners go to choose, make sure it's a licensed EOS implementer. That's how you get the EOS book that's sitting in front of you and all the licensed EOS material. There are a ton of people who call themselves EOS implementers out there. Just make sure you go to the website, find one that's actually truly been through the EOS coaching, because the way that she teaches it to us, I think, is unique, and it definitely encourages our participation and buy-in.
And she will hold your feet to the fire.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So one of the first things you have to do within the EOS system is you have to determine who's going to be on your leadership team, i.e. who's going to be in the EOS meetings.
Yep.
So we had to think about that. And basically she encourages, obviously, the visionary, that is me. I'm sort of necessary. You as the implementer, the COO.
Integrator.
The integrator. Christine is the implementer. You are the integrator.
Yes, sir.
If I was going to rework the system, I would change that.
No, not 2 eyes.
Yes, I know. Two eyes makes it a little different. But then you have to figure out who else is on your leadership team. And I think ideally, the Christine was saying that 4 to 7 is the sweet spot in terms of numbers.
Yep, especially for our size. It varies. But yeah, even for most teams, we're a little large.
So in addition to the two of us, we had the head of the Social Security Department, head of the VA Department, head of the Insurance Department, head of the Mass Tort Department, and head of what we would call the Administrative Appeals Hunter-Gatherer Department.
If you had a revenue stream.
Right. If you had a revenue
were responsible for part of the bringing in a certain amount of cash for the budget, you were in our leadership team as well. That was our distinction, I think.
Right. And so sometimes you have to make some choices.
But
ultimately, we established what the leadership team was. So day one, first of all, you can do EOS virtually or you can do it live. We chose to do it live. I would highly encourage doing it live. When it's done virtually, people are on their phones, people are multitasking. We do it live. We go to
offsite,
get out of the office, all cell phones down. You can look at your cell phone in a break. You're totally committed during the roughly 7.5, 8 hours that we're together. We start at 8:30 in the morning, go to around 4:30 in the afternoon. Yes, we hit happy hour and dinner afterwards, of course, after spending that much time together. But that's what a day at EOS looks like. We started in December, so when you first start, you do 3 months in a row. So we did December, January, February, and then you start going quarterly.
Exactly.
And at the end of the year, you have a 2-day offsite, sort of a retreat,
An annual planning.
an annual planning retreat. And then you'll do that a second year. That's basically the mechanics of how it looks. But then there's kind of actually what you're looking for. So the EOS model, there's basically the EOS model is your building revolves around 6 core
components. Yep.
That's the word. I was going to say processes, but that's not correct. 6 core components. The people component, the vision component, the data component, issues, process, and then finally traction. Traction is where the rubber meets the road. That's actually implementing and executing on your visions. Talk to me a little bit about this. In those 6 things, what do you think is where you start, where we've made the most progress, what we struggle with?
Yeah, so the EOS model. So you always start, and traction starts, and we'll look at in the next segment, the table of contents, and kind of see what our favorite chapters were. But you always start with the people, especially in a services industry. I'm sure in a goods manufacturing industry, it'd be maybe less important, but I doubt it. But even in an AI world, it's still your people talking to your clients, your people that are going to show up every day. And so you start with the people, right seats. And that's where the people analyzer, I don't think we talked about that in the first segment. But that's also a tool that EOS came up with, beautiful in its simplicity. It's not a number, it's a plus minus. More often than not, do you exhibit our core values, and do you have the GWC? You get it, want it, and have the capacity for it.
So let's break that down a little bit. So we have 6 core values, and the way the people analyzer works, this is kind of like an evaluation tool you use on everybody. How do you rate on the 6 core values? I'm not going to go into the values right now, but you basically score either a plus
or minus
or
plus minus
or a neutral, which is called the plus minus. So basically it's just 3, it's real quick, just plus minus, or minus.
Yep.
So the 6 core values. And then there's an additional 3 questions at the end that you also are scoring on the same system. And they are?
What EOS will call the GWC.
Right.
Do you get it? Do you want it? And do you have the capacity for it? Meaning capacity can mean a lot of different things. In the EOS world, capacity means, do you have the mental and actual time to do what we're asking you to do? Especially for our lawyers, I think that's an important one for us, to help us gauge how either overwhelmed they are, or are they challenged just right for the things that we're asking them to do. But you always start with the people, right seats. You always end with traction, right? So you get the people, the data, the process, all the things.
And don't forget the vision.
The vision from our visionary. Why don't you talk about that, Marc, since you're a visionary?
I am the visionary. And so when you talk about your vision, the first is, what is your why? What is your purpose? Why do you exist as a business? Why do you get out of bed every morning and come to work? And the thought is that everybody, from the leader to the attorneys down to the basic entry-level legal clerks, they need to understand the purpose of the business, the why of the business. They need to have a compelling vision, a compelling purpose to get out of bed in the morning. And we tried to keep it extremely simple. Our compelling vision that we came up with was simply to improve the lives of our injured and disabled clients. Or I think the way we actually phrased it in the end was to make a difference in the lives of our injured and disabled clients. And it's extremely simple, but it's extremely elegant. It's extremely beautiful. It's very powerful.
Yeah, I think it's powerful.
To make a difference in the lives of other people. If that can't get you motivated, then quite frankly, you don't need to work for us.
No.
So we start there. That's the purpose. And then we move on to the vision. And the vision is a little bit more complicated process, but we basically start with a 5-year plan, and then you kind of break it down into a 3-year plan, and then a 1-year plan, and then you break it down into your 90-day, what they refer to as your rocks, or your goals, your 90-day goals. Basically what you're doing is you're beginning with the sort of the end in mind. We call the end the 5-year plan. Maybe 5 years is not the end, but it's about as far out in the future as anybody probably wants to look. But then you reverse engineer it from there. And that basically is how you develop your vision. All of this is great, but if you can't execute, if you can't implement, as they say, if you can't develop traction,
exactly,
then none of this is actually going to help.
Yeah, and it can almost be disincentivizing because you're moving a lot of cheese. It's one of those things that can, if not done correctly, I think then it can be it can cause more harm than good if your team's not bought into it. Which is why one of the main reasons why we did the EOS kickoff, took everyone out of work for the latter part of the afternoon, did a huge team building exercise. The most part to get the buy-in, to kind of share your vision for where you wanted to go, but to also hear from each of their team leaders, their department managers who ended up, for our firm, that was the attorney in charge of the department. That's just the way that worked with the way that our structure is currently. And to hear from them in their own words, their own enthusiasm for it, their own excitement, their own what they hope to get out of it. So to hopefully build that excitement about what we're going to be doing for the next 5 years.
Right. The real simplified 5-year plan. It's a little bit more complex than this, but just for our purposes here in this podcast today, the 5-year plan is to double the number of families that we can assist. So if our purpose is to make a difference in the lives of our clients, and we kind of expanded that to make a difference in the lives of our clients and their families, because when we help our clients, we help their families as well. So we think of our clients as a group of families.
Mm-hmm.
So we wanted to double the number of families that we're currently helping. I think this year we were probably somewhere in the neighborhood of about 4,000.
Mm-hmm.
And over the next 5 years, we wanted to double our capacity to be able to help, let's say, 8,000 families in a year. So that was the overarching goal. There's a lot of subparts to that, so I won't bog us down with talking about that. But you have to get your people to buy into that vision.
Mm-hmm.
And quite frankly, what's in it for them? If we expand the size of the firm, what's in it for our staff, our team members? Well, one thing, it creates opportunity for them. And we explained that. As we grow, that gives us opportunity to grow the firm, to be able to advance people up in the career ladder, because we're going to create a more complex organization, to be able to generate more revenue so we can generate bigger raises, bigger bonuses. So you kind of have to outline the vision in terms of what's in it for your team, so they will come along with you.
Yeah. So we talked about the vision, I think, in terms of 3 or 4 concepts, what it means in terms of revenue, obviously, but not just that, our team members, what the firm itself is going to look like in 5 years. What is the contribution to our community going to be? We obviously have your scholarships, and then of course the firm. What's it going to look like in a few years, in 5 years? And so the vision is multifaceted, though it looks simple at the beginning.
Right. And the key is you've got to lay this out to everybody. You can't keep this a secret. Everybody in the firm needs to know what the vision is. Everybody in the firm needs to buy into the vision. As part of the people analyzer, as you can tell who's buying into the vision. If there are people that just simply aren't on board, maybe they either need to change seats on the bus, or maybe they just need to get off the bus. Knowing where you're going is a great way to figure out if you've got the right people on the bus. This is Marc Whitehead, lawyer, entrepreneur, and business coach. Thanks for listening to the Successful Barrister Podcast. If we've stirred your juices, hit me up with an email at marc@marcwhitehead.com. Remember, Marc is spelled with a C. And get on the Successful Barrister newsletter mailing list. Even better, let's set up a call. I'd love to talk to you about working together, talk shop, or just shooting the breeze. All right, Diana, so this last section here, we're going to actually talk a little about the book itself, Traction. I know there's a lot of people out there who probably don't have the time, energy, or money, at least at this point in their life, to implement the entire EOS system. But what I do want to encourage and have people take away from this is all you need to do is to buy this simple book, which is probably in the neighborhood of $30, $35, which you can get, God knows, anywhere.
It's about $15 on Amazon.
Damn.
Yeah, that's a steal. And we also bought it about a year ago, a year before we started our own EOS journey. So we are basically a case study for any of our listeners out there, because we read it during what we call our quarterly leadership bootcamps, where we would do a very small version of just reading a book and then going as a team offsite to share a meal, break bread together, but then also discuss the book in some format. And we did that with Traction, right? And a full year before we even committed to the EOS system.
So it's an easy read. So $15 and maybe 3 or 4 or 5 hour easy read. And you could really make a difference in your practice. So I think a small investment to pay. So let's talk about the fundamentals of the book. So we've talked a lot about EOS and the vision component and the people component which are, quite frankly, the first 2 or 3 chapters in the book, which goes without saying that you got to have the right people in the right seats on the right bus to start with. You got to have the vision. What is your business about, which is kind of the beginning of the book. But here at chapter 5, I think this is where you started to geek out on the data component.
Yeah.
Talk to us about the data component.
Yeah, and the data is not the first step to your point. You got to start with the people. So I think that everyone thinks that, well, as long as I have the numbers in front of me, then I can make my business work. And Gino Wickman says, no, that's absolutely the wrong idea. And so when you finally get to the point where you can look at your data because you have the right people in the right seat, then you can start looking at the data, and that's where the scorecard comes in. In our limited time together here with our listeners, we really don't have time to go over all of the EOS tools. Obviously, I just want a complete disclaimer out there. Christine is teaching us all of them. It's just we don't have time to go through them all during our limited time today. So the scorecard is, so each wheel or each component has a specific tool, which is part of the simplicity, the beauty of the simplicity I think that Wickman came up with in EOS is here is the concept and here's a tool to help you execute on that concept. And the scorecard is that tool for the data.
So what are some of the key scorecard metrics that we use, that we look at?
Yeah, and to be fair, we've gone through several iterations of the scorecard. I think we're always kind of just clarifying, but obviously weekly revenue, where are we weekly? So with scorecard, you look at weekly at your level 10 meeting. And we talked briefly at the beginning about the level 10 meeting, but it's a great way to encourage accountability. And so the scorecard, you have everything from revenue to new leads. So it covers all the high numbers. It's not a dashboard. That was one of the things that we had to come up with, is it's not the dashboard that you probably already have for your firm. It's just the very high level things that are going to be kind of the pinpoints that say, oh, something's not going to trend in the right direction if we don't fix this or look at it or examine it today.
So some of my favorite data points, Google reviews, both positive and negative.
Mm-hmm.
We report on that weekly because you can start to spot trends. Obviously revenue. And it's not just revenue, but revenue versus projection. So in other words, we think we should get this. We only got this. Why? Outstanding balances. We look at why are these balances outstanding as long as they've been outstanding? The number of days that balances have been outstanding. Again, things that can tell you, that make you ask the question, why? Why is it this way as opposed to the way we want it to be? The number of leads we brought in a week, the number of cases we've signed up in a week. What are the ones I'm missing? I know there's at least 2 more good ones that we've come up with.
NPS score.
Oh, yes, our NPS score. We look at our NPS score weekly. Net promoter score, as our director is looking at me saying, nobody knows what an NPS score is. Our net promoter score.
Yep.
You'll have to explain net promoter score because I don't even know that I know the full ins.
Oh, it's basically answering the question, would you recommend us? On a scale of 1 to 10, and would you recommend our services to someone who you knew needed us? And so who are your people out there promoting you as a business? And you want to obviously be in the higher end of those things.
So I think the overall concept, though, of the chapter is that you need to know the key data points within your business, and you need to follow them on a regular basis, not only for looking at the raw numbers themselves, but looking at the trends. Are you trending up? Are you trending down? Are you trending in the right direction? Are you trending in the wrong direction?
Yeah, and so for all those EOS skeptics out there, like, well, okay, but I already do this, right? Because we've had dashboards forever. We've looked at quarterly dashboards sometimes. We've looked at things. We've had monthly meetings for as long as I've been here, probably pre-existing me for a lot longer than that. What I think that EOS does differently, though, is it provides a way for you to bring that data around as an issue. So one of the things we haven't talked about, which I think is huge, is the level 10 IDS section, which is the bulk of the level 10 meeting. And so the idea, though, behind, especially to wrap up this data component, is that if something is awry in the scorecard, it's basically red where it's supposed to be green and or neutral, then it becomes an issue in the IDS section of the level 10. So, and then it becomes, from the level 10 meeting, there's an opportunity for it to become a to-do that brings it back up to the next level 10 meeting. And so there's this whole cycle, whereas things not necessarily if you have a monthly dashboard meeting with your team, you're looking at numbers. Okay, well, the next month we're going to look at this or bring me back this. And there's no real system in place to make sure that those things really do happen either next month or that someone brings you the answers to your questions. And so the EOS system definitely does, okay, if this is a problem or you recognize this is the problem this way, and then this is how you make sure that it gets addressed.
So you segued into the next chapter, which was the issues chapter. And this is one of the key things that I really love about traction and the way Wickman has described it. So many people, so many firms out there have issues that just linger. They just sit there, nothing ever happens, and it just festers and festers and festers. And trust me, this stuff typically doesn't just go away on its own. It's got to be dealt with. So part of the process here is that you have to deal with your issues on a weekly basis. Want to go through the process. You mentioned IDS. You're going to have to define for our listeners what you mean by IDS.
Yep. So there's a section of the level 10 meeting, IDS.
Cover level 10 meeting real quickly because we keep talking about it. I don't know that we've ever mentioned what a level 10 meeting is.
It's a tool.
It's our weekly meeting.
It's our weekly 90-minute meeting with our leadership team. And there's a very specific format that EOS says you must follow. And the bulk of that 90-minute meeting, at least 60 minutes of it, is IDS, which is I is issues, D is discuss, and S is solve. So issues, discuss, solve. And there's a specific format that Christine helps us by identifying in our sessions together. She helps us identify what are issues and what are rocks, right? What are the things that we just need to kind of discuss and then solve them? And what are the rocks? What are the ones that are really going to take 90 days to more or less complete, solve, work through, implement systems, change ways of doing things? And so the IDS is really where I think the heart of the meeting is. Right.
And so the key is defining the issues. And sometimes these issues are tough. Sometimes they're very personal. Sometimes they're, a lot of personalities and sensitivities involved with some of these issues, but you have to address them. So number one, you identify the issue. Number two, you have a discussion of the issue, a respectful discussion of the issue. But the most important part is that you must solve the issue. Yeah. You can't let it linger. You must solve the issue. In other words, you got to make a decision. And sometimes that comes down to me as the leader of the firm. I have to make a choice. And not everybody's going to like the choice that I make, but I've got to make that choice. Don't. I know you usually don't.
No, but I do think that
heavy is the head that wears the crown. All I got to say.
Yeah.
So, but those issues, sometimes the way you solve an issue, and segue into the next chapter or the final chapter, which is the traction component, which is sometimes the way to solve an issue is to create what traction would refer to as a rock. A rock is simply a 90-day goal. In other words, so if it can't be solved in the moment, but can be solved or dealt with over a process, it becomes a rock, and then it becomes reported on a weekly basis as what is our progress on our rock.
At your level 10 meeting, exactly.
At the level 10 meeting, and the goal is after 90 days, we have solved the issue once and for all.
Yep, that or it just becomes a bigger rock, or the next rock at the next quarterly goal.
Or sometimes it just takes an adjustment. So chapter 7, the process component, finding your way. This is one that sounds simple, but we tend to struggle with because it's not just process, documenting your core processes. It is, the second part of it is followed by all.
Oh, yeah. No, we struggle.
And that's where we struggle. I think that's where a lot of people struggle. It's easy to write a process. It is hard to get it to be followed by all. That's the key phrase in traction, followed by all. You'll see that repeatedly throughout the book. And that's where we filter down the level 10 meetings down from our core leadership team to level 10 meetings within the actual practice group. So we have what we call our leadership level 10 meeting, but then we have our section level 10 meetings. So they have their own level 10 meetings within, say, the Social Security section or the VA section or insurance section. And this is where the followed by all part really starts to get implemented, hopefully gets implemented, because it's one thing for us to do it on high and just dictate, but to get the process is followed by all down at the lower levels within the firm. Takes that extra section level 10 meeting to really get it to be pushed down throughout the firm. Anytime we implement a process, or God help us, we change the process. Anytime we move people's cheese, it just, God help us.
Exactly. It's never easy.
So the last part, and I know we've jumped a little bit, is the traction component. And we've talked about the level 10 meeting. The level 10 meeting is the actual traction component. Mm-hmm. This is where we create our rocks, and it's where we create our milestones. Our milestones are like sub rocks. Talk about that a little bit.
Well, it's kind of like stair-stepping your rock, right? So if I start here and I want to end up somewhere not here at the end of the quarter, how am I going to get there? And it just kind of helps everyone. Milestones that get submitted to me as the integrator, and I help you or help the leadership team stay accountable to those milestones by how are we doing? And so that becomes part of the level 10. How are we doing on executing your rock, and what percentage are you now, and how are you doing on your milestones, and whether or not they need to be revisited. As the quarter goes on, we're filming this about 2/3 of the quarter. And so at the next level 10, already on our IDS, and I think I called it issues. It's supposed to be identify, wasn't it?
Oh, I think, did you get the I wrong?
I got the I wrong.
Oh, identify, discuss, solve.
Yeah, I think. But at that point.
All right, McKinley's just going to have to go back and edit out everything we just said.
Yes.
I know.
It's just no good.
Good luck with that.
So you go through there, and so now my job is about the 2/3 of the quarter. How are we doing on our rocks? And that becomes an IDS, and trying to get to where everyone can feel successful at the end of the quarter on their rocks.
Well, with that, I think we're running out of time here, so we're going to wrap this up. So again, everybody, go get you a copy of Traction, read it, love it. Call me if you want to discuss it. By the way, I have a 38-page, I think it was 38-page, summary of the book. Number one, you have to promise me you actually read the book. But then if you email me and say, I promise I actually read the book, I'd just like a copy of the summary, I'll be happy to send you a copy of the summary. I'm Marc Whitehead, so again, my mother couldn't spell. She spelled Marc with a C. So when you email me, it's Marc with a C at marcwhitehead.com. Send me an email. I'll be happy to send you a summary and would love to discuss it further with you. With that, we ask everybody, come visit us at successfulbarrister.com.
Yep. In a year, we should actually do a Traction Revisited podcast.
I think we might.
Just at or EOS Revisited, maybe.
All right.
Just spitballing, and see where we are in a year after we've basically gone through the implementation. So stay tuned in.
Let us hear from you. Please go and find our podcast at your favorite podcast site and go and give us a 5-star Google review so we can get the word out. And we'll see you next time here on The Successful Barrister.